What is up, guys? My name is Taylor, and today I'm going to teach you the best way that you can make your own juggling balls. Now, some YouTubers will show you other methods for making your own juggling balls, methods that I just don't think are as good as this method, like filling a plastic ball with sand or sewing. I'm going to show you a better method. This is called the snow method. It was developed in Norway over 200 years ago, and it's still used today by some of the best prop makers in the business. In fact, most of the big names in juggling props that you've heard use this snow method. It's the best, hands down, and even though it takes a little bit of time to get right, you will not regret it. So let's do it. Before we get into it, just a big shout out to everyone who is a member of my Patreon. You guys are the best. You're the reason this is here. Thank you so much. If you want to be an epic member of the Otter Club, you can do that for just $2 a month. There's a link in the description. So in order to do the snow method, you're gonna need a few things. Some rubber gloves, food coloring. I personally use the gel style food coloring. You can use the liquid drops. It does result in a slightly different ball. I will go over that later. And you're going to need snow. If you don't live somewhere with snow or you're trying to do this in the summer, you're gonna have to buy a plane ticket, get yourself to somewhere that has it, and you can just do this there. All right, step one, you're gonna have to go out into the snow. I do recommend wearing gloves. I'm not responsible if any of you get frostbite. The only kind of frostbite we want is the juggling pattern. Get yourself some of those gloves, make sure you're bundled up. We're gonna start by just making some basic snowballs. I'm not gonna go too in depth on how to do this. It's pretty self-explanatory. You take the snow, you crunch it up into a ball. Now I will say, depending on how tightly you pack the ball, it will result in a different finish on the ball. For a shinier, glossier looking result, you wanna really pack that snowball super tight. The denser you make that snowball, the shinier that gloss will be. And if you make it less dense, it will result in a more matte style finish. I'll show examples of this at the end, so don't worry. Now you can see here, I am not making the most round snowball that has ever been made. I can make a pretty perfect sphere snowball, but since I live in Utah, the quality of the snow is so high that my juggling ball will end up being pretty round no matter what I do, just because the quality is so good. If you live somewhere that has worse snow than Utah, like pretty much everywhere else, you may need to spend a little more time perfecting that shape. When you're making your snowball, you also want to be thinking about what size ball you want to have. During this process, the snow is going to expand, which is going to result in a bigger ball than the snowball that you're making. So keep that in mind. Whatever size ball you're trying to make, try to make that snowball a bit smaller than that because it will expand. My final tip when making these, try your best not to get too much dirt in there. As you can see here, this has a little bit of dirt in it. I don't really feel like remaking it, so I'm just gonna keep it. But because of that dirt, this ball will end up having some slight marks and scuffs on it. So keep that in mind. The dirtier the snow, the dirtier the ball. Cool, so I have 3 different sizes here. I'm gonna try to make a couple different types of juggling balls for you. As an example, got a really small one, kind of a medium one, and a big one. Now that we've got the snowballs made, we're gonna pick our colors and dye them. This step is optional. If you don't use any sort of dye, you're just gonna get a white ball. It is harder to do that because, again, you are gonna see more of those imperfections in the snow. So I highly recommend, especially if you're a beginner, use some sort of dye. It will probably look better. For this tutorial, I'm gonna make a blue ball, a red ball, and a green ball. Let's do that. This is where you're gonna use those rubber gloves. You don't have to, but if you don't, your hands are probably gonna get all colored and gross, so get some of those rubber gloves, snap those on, and then we're gonna take your food coloring and you're gonna start putting it on the ball. There's different methods for doing this. The bigger prop manufacturers have an automated factory way of doing it, but for us, we have to do it by hand. My favorite way to do this is to squirt some of that dye on a plate and then rub the dye all over your juggling ball. Now you might be thinking, wow, that looks kind of crappy. Yes, it does, but it doesn't need to be perfect. You'll see it will look fine. You do want to make sure you get some dye into those little bumps and stuff. If you miss too many of those, it'll just end up with like an uneven color and it looks kind of crappy. So try your best to get as much of those bumps as you can, or just make a better snowball. I'm gonna do that for all 3 of my colors. And then we're ready for the next step. Next step is super simple. You're just gonna take those snowballs and stick them in your freezer. Keep in mind what I said earlier, they are going to expand. They will get bigger, so you gotta make sure you have room for that in both your freezer and what they're on. Now my freezer isn't very big, so I'm gonna have to do these one at a time. You're gonna leave those snowballs in the freezer for about 70 minutes. There is a lot of disagreement among jugglers about the exact amount of time that you should leave these in there. I personally find that around 73 minutes is perfect, but times do vary depending on altitude and your freezer settings. So I left mine in for 73 minutes. I did that with all 3 of my snowballs. Now comes the best part. We're gonna see what they look like. Now before the big reveal, if you're liking this video, if this tutorial is helping you out, make sure you smash that like button, give me a subscribe, check out my other content, you won't regret it. All right, let's see what we made. So as you can see, these got a lot bigger. That's a really good sign. It means that this process worked. So next comes the really fun part. You just start peeling away at that snow. The blue one's looking good. You can see on my red one that the ball is already peeking through, so we'll just rip off that snow. And there we have it. The green one looking good. I do see that I accidentally had some like debris in there, some leaves and some dirt. I didn't see that when I was making it. Kind of a bummer. There are some subtle marks on there. Oh well, I still think it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Those are the 3 balls that I made today. So we've got 2 of the smaller ones. This one is obviously smaller than that one because I made that snowball even smaller. This one's really big, made a big snowball. Pretty self-explanatory. Now you can really see what I was talking about the density. I really packed this snowball as tight as I could, and as you can see, the result is a lot glossier. This one I did a little looser, and it's much more matte. Both of these have some little marks on them because of that dirt that I accidentally had in the ball. Overall, they're pretty small. I'm not too worried about it. I think they turned out really good. Oh, I did forget to mention the density that I was talking about. Not only makes it glossier, it also affects how soft the balls are, like how much give there is. So this one, you can see there's almost no give. It is a very solid ball because I packed it in so tight. This one, a little bit looser, you can see there's a lot more give. That's just because I packed it less tight. The moisture in the snow also has something to do with that, but that's some pretty advanced technique I don't want to get into for this tutorial. Now I did mention earlier about the different kinds of food coloring, food dye that you can use. I used gel for these, and as you can see, they're pretty like solid colors. They're very traditional. When I've used the liquid kind, I've found that the colors tend to be a little bit softer, like a little more pastel. I actually have some examples that I've made in the past with the liquid dye that I can show you. So here's a great example of the red. We've got the gel food dye and the liquid food dye. As you can see, this one is a little bit more pastel. It's a little softer in color, kind of lighter. That's why. Same thing with this blue, different dye, different color. Same thing. Earlier I mentioned like if you don't have great snow like here in Utah and you don't make a perfect sphere, it will end up showing in the final ball. I have an example that I made over on the East Coast with their snow. It's just not as good. It has a lot of imperfections. So you can kind of see here, these little divots and bumps. You can see where those imperfections were and they came out in the final product. So like I said, in order to avoid that, you can either really spend time making that sphere perfect. Some people use tools and sort of like shave it down, or you can just come to Utah, get some good snow. All right, there you have it. That is how you make juggling balls with the snow method, the best method in my opinion, and pretty much by most other jugglers. I made 3 completely different juggling balls. I'm really happy with them. You know, a little bit of imperfections here and there, but overall, super stoked about this. So give that a try. If you follow every step perfectly, you pay attention to my tips, I guarantee you, you're gonna have some great looking juggling balls as a result. If they come out crappy, you probably messed up somewhere. Do it again, do it better. So that's all I got. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe if you're not. As always, don't forget, never let them see you drop, and keep throwing up. I'll see you next time. I'm gonna teach you the best way that this is so stupid. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. To do some trial and error and figure out what. Is that a bloody nose? Oh no. Does this count as demonetization because it's got blood and gore? Oh no. I'll be right back. I get bloody noses a lot. Gotta get through this video before I lose light. Do it again, do it better. It's so mean. It's such a mean thing to say in a tutorial. Man, I really hope it comes across that this was like a parody. Obviously, the method is not real, but like I hope people realize that all the YouTube-y stuff was fake, because I'm not actually doing that. I think it's really annoying. It's a joke. Yeah, my nose is still bleeding.